Joining us, MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone-Lopez, MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell, Associated Press correspondent for European Security Emma Burrows in Nuuk, Greenland for us, and former U.S. ambassador to Denmark Rufus Gifford. He's in Copenhagen. Laura, help me understand what exactly is going on in the White House and why the president thought it was a good idea or somehow justifiable to send a text message to Norway saying that because they hurt his feelings, he needs Denmark to give him Greenland.
I think in some way, Katie, we shouldn't be surprised that this is the way the president communicated to another foreign leader, given the fact that the president has been very public about the fact that he wants Greenland. He, his advisors, one of his top deputy chiefs of staff, Stephen Miller, have said over and over again that this is what they want, that the U.S., they have claimed that the U.S. has a right to claim Greenland, questioning Denmark's right and sovereignty and questioning Greenland's sovereignty and saying essentially that if the U.S. military can take control of Greenland, then it should be the United States. And that this is essentially what the president is prepared to do to make sure that it happens. And so over the weekend, an escalation where the president posted on True Social that he was going to enact 10% tariffs on Denmark and 7 other European countries. These are allies of the United States. A 10% tariff on goods that they're sending to the U.S. And then that would escalate to 25% come June. If they do not agree and if they do not work with the U.S. on supposedly purchasing Greenland. As you laid out, these countries are not interested in that at all. I mean, Denmark and Norway and all the other European allies have made very clear that this is not something that is on the table and that it would be dangerous and that it could potentially break apart NATO and irrevocably, harm NATO. And that was what Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was asked about this weekend by NBC's Kristen Welker, which is how would this not totally irreparably harm NATO? And here's what he had to say, Katie.
The European leaders will come around and they will understand that they need to be under the U.S. security umbrella. What would happen in Ukraine that if the U.S. pulled its support out? The whole thing would collapse.
So I'm not really sure what the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent knows that we don't know, Katie, because I know that myself, our colleague David Rohde, others have talked to former and current diplomats, European diplomats who have reiterated and repeated over and over again, in addition to their heads of state, that this is not something that European allies are willing to engage on and negotiate on, Katie.
Yeah, I mean, you have the French and German officials comparing Trump's tariff threat to blackmail. They're calling it blackmail. Keir Starmer said it was completely wrong. I mean, these are all tough words toward another ally. And just to emphasize one more point, which I mentioned a moment ago, both Denmark and Greenland have said that if the U.S. wants to build more bases or mine for minerals or have a better economic foothold or whatever in Greenland, they're open to that. They're going to allow it. They've offered all of that to the United States. The United States has said, or the president has said, that is not enough. So, Emma, take me to Nuuk. Take me to the reaction today and what might come next.
It's very hard to know what might come next, to be honest. Greenlanders here are feeling very scared and very afraid, and they very much want the world to know that their island is not for sale. But I think what's happened today with Norway releasing that letter from Donald Trump really adds another layer of complexity for Europeans when it comes to interpreting why Donald Trump wants to take this Arctic island. It's quite unusual, I think, for Norway to release that kind of letter. It's also quite unusual for the UK Prime Minister to do such an early morning statement. Those sorts of things are normally reserved in the UK for calling elections or during the pandemic updates about COVID. And I think there's a real sense in Europe and very much here in Greenland that enough is enough. For the last year, we've seen European nations tiptoe around Trump. They've tried to cajole him. They have tried to use diplomacy. particularly when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine. And they've done that even when the White House has pushed positions which are much closer to Moscow than the Europeans would like when it comes to ending that war. And so now I think this letter probably befuddles them even more. I spoke this morning to Greenland's business minister, who's responsible for metals and mining and those minerals which you referred to. And she said that she was struggling to understand Trump's position and the White House's position. And she suggested that it kind of came down to three things. The first thing is boosting American security. But as you mentioned, there is a defense agreement between the US and Denmark, which dates back to the 1950s, under which the US can essentially boost its bases and presence here as much as it wants. And actually, successive administrations have chosen to reduce the number of US troops here from thousands to just a few hundred right now. The second view is that Trump wants this island for its minerals and its mining opportunities. But I spoke to the minerals Minister Naya Nathanielson this morning. She's the woman who is in charge of granting permits for exploration on this island. And she said she very much welcomes US investment, and she will talk to US investors who want to explore opportunities here, although she did say it takes 16 years on average to get anything from a mine, so it's not quick. And the third thing, and I think this is the thing that Europeans are really struggling to deal with at the moment, is that she said she believes that Trump wants to make America bigger again, that he's out to expand the US's footprint so that when he leaves the White House, he can point to that as his legacy.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart point that you just made at the end there. Emma, thank you so much. We'll let you go. I know it's cold up there. All right, Ambassador, help me understand how European allies are reacting privately right now, because as I said, I can only imagine how frustrated and how betrayed they feel by but also how confused they are by what the United States is trying to accomplish here.
Oh, Katie, it is. So I arrived in Copenhagen this morning on a pre-planned trip. The timing is coincidental. Obviously, I've spent years of my life here and have visited many times, even since I was ambassador. This is the first time that you actually feel like something is different in the air. I was walking down the street, and Danes pretty much know who I am, and I got stopped by a couple of policemen on the street, thanking me for being as outspoken as I have been on this issue, have said, "We love you guys. What's going on back there? It makes no sense to us. We have done everything you've ever asked." I just had coffee with someone I didn't know, a Danish veteran, who just sent me the most beautiful note that I just posted. And he uses the term heartbroken now, sad, angry, at the way they've been spoken about, they've been treated. I think they're kind of a lost story in all of this, as we talk so much about kind of the bilateral relationships. And honestly, I'll say this in closing. This is where we are. Greenland has said they're not for sale. Denmark has said they're not for sale. NATO has said they can't, that the Greenland will never be American. The EU has said the same thing. 70% of Americans don't want this to happen. Americans, we need to start asking ourselves, is this in America's national security interests, or is this in the interests of one man? Because the rest of it just doesn't make sense based on everything else you've just reported.
Are European allies looking at us and thinking that some sanity will be restored once he's gone? I mean, Donald Trump is such a singular figure. We might not go back to, Biden era, alliance handholding, but do they look at a J.D. Vance or somebody else that might follow in the wake of Donald Trump, if it ends up being a J.D. Vance or somebody like him, and do they think that he's as desperate to rip up all of the alliances and create a new global order, basically to say that Donald Trump did this thing in his legacy? Or do they believe that the future of America is going to be what we are experiencing now, or that it'll go back to something more like we've become accustomed to over the last 70 years?
Yeah, Katie, it's Vance is a tricky one here. Vance is the first one who's been as outspoken that, say, Denmark is a bad ally, which is just so offensive to them. So I'll take Vance off the table. They desperately want an ally again, a friend again, the country that they fought and died alongside. They want that country back desperately, whether that president is Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter, and they want it. But I will say this, and my favorite word in the English language is the word trust. We have worked for 80 years to build the trust that we had built since the end of World War II, especially with our NATO allies. And it is extraordinary the rate at which trust has eroded across the Atlantic. It's extraordinary. And any American who walks the street here will feel it.